created Amarillo, and it's available now to stream. It's such a unique blend of genres and three-dimensional characters with really sharp writing. What initially inspired this story?
Well, what inspired the story was a lot of impatience, a lot of waiting for, permission to
Mm,
get to create. I have a friend, he's in the movie. He plays one of the friends named Warner Hyatt, his stage name Warrington. And he's a musician and he's self-produced all of his albums. He writes, produces, and he releases that. And it's like such a one-man band. And I'm so jealous of just like the freedom and the ability he has to create. You know what I mean? I've always been jealous of like a musician who gets to sit down and jam in their room. But like as an actor, you can't really. You need other people. You need a lot of permission and so that kind of inspired me to, I'd been trying writing, but with the intention of having somebody read the script and say, oh, we want to make this, we'll give you,
mm,
you know, but with this movie, I was just like, I need to make something that I can just pick up a camera. Like worst case scenario, like I was gonna film this, like if I had to, on an iPhone in my apartment, some friends. Somehow convinced Peter Giles to do it because I wrote that role for him. I couldn't, but everything else I would have just done myself. And so that convinced, I also have always wanted to do a Western. Western is just my favorite genre. It's just,
mm,
but that's a genre that you really do need, huge sets. You need costume. You need so much to do a Western. And so I kind of was cheating. I kind of brought the Western characters into the modern day LA, and so I was basically trying to do a Western without doing a Western, and that was kind of what inspired it, and as well as just after the vaccine had come out, so it was like kind of like everybody
mm,
was kind of getting back to work with COVID, and so a lot of people were maybe having harder times getting back to work, and so the people that worked on this film were shared kind of my impatience and wanting to get back to work.
mm.
So that was a big part of it, and a lot of it was just like a lot of stars lining up and things like that, and it ended up being just such a thing that came together in such a great way. I've never since or before experienced something coming together like that, like where it was just like I think I wrote the script 4 months before we started shooting, like that. Every other script I've been working on for 5 years. So
Mm.
it was great. I loved every aspect of it.
Perfect. Like it was the next question. Also, it's a very well-written script, but my next question for you was, one of the best parts of independent filmmaking is that everybody's there because they believe in the project. What was that process like for you putting together your creative team behind and in front of the camera?
Right. So the first part of it was getting, again, like I keep bringing him up, but Peter Giles. He was kind of like, we've been friends and we've been talking about writing something together, and then it kind of would start and stop and start and stop, and this one I kind of just wrote on myself. Usually, like going forward with something, like, or the quickest way for me to get something done is when I don't tell anybody I'm doing it and I just kind of do it
Mm,
on my own. And then I kind of came up to him, I'm like, can you read the script? And he wrote it and he's like, you want me to play Ambrose? And I'm like, how'd you know? And he goes, like, so he knew that I wrote that for him. I was just so once I had him and I was just like, I'm gonna make it. And then I kind of got everybody else involved, but I think there was just sort of like when they read the script, they were like, oh, you want to just make this? Because I think it was just like, it was very clear, like in the DNA of the script, it's like, we can do this. Like this is something it's written to be like, we don't need any, like we're just gonna make it. And so Josh Smith, the DP, well, obviously I got my dad involved as the producer, who then was able to get Josh Smith, the DP, to read the script. And then when that happened, it was like, okay, we have a movie, so we're just gonna go ahead and make it happen. And everybody else, and Ricky Cruz came on, the producer, um, and so once that happened, it happened really quick. It was just like once you get one person to be passionate about it, then it gets
mhm.
another person, and it kind of grows, and then you have a crew. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a testament to your writing. And your character in the film believes that the best writing comes from deadlines and pressures. Having shot this film in 10 days, do you think that also translates into acting and why you were able to get so many incredible performances across the board?
Like the amount of pressure that he was putting on himself is, I think, not conducive to writing.
Hmm.
Like on our set, like yeah, it was tight and it was stressful at times, but it was fun. Like, and I don't think like anybody really felt like, you got one take to do. Like it really felt like you had enough time. And I mean, it didn't feel like it felt like an efficient set. Like we had to move, but it didn't feel like we were like rushing to get everything. And I think a lot of the reason that the performances were so good is because you look at people like Peter, you look at Luke Jones, you look at Lindsay Smith, and this is kind of goes back to why I wanted to make this movie. It's like these are people who have been working, in training as actors for so long that it's like they didn't need me. They didn't need like that's they just needed, a stage to perform on, and that's kind of what I wanted to do was just like these are just all these talented people that I know, and if I could just write them a role that they could show that in, and that's kind of the way it is in Hollywood, unfortunately, is so many people that are talented and ready and have so much experience, like don't get the chance to show that, and so I was just if I could just do that. And and honestly, the fact that you even brought up the performance like that's all I wanted. It was like just an opportunity to say like, look what we can do, given the opportunity.
It's a very writer-director answer from you. I imagine as a writer, you also have a really strong sense of who these characters are. But when you cast your actors, you want to give them the freedom to make them their own. How are you able to create the space for your actors to do just that? And did any of their interpretations surprise you?
I guess it was just yeah, it was just about trusting that like I casted the right person, um, and trusting that they're gonna have opinions. Um, and a lot of it was like, I'm focused on so many things, on this movie that it's like you kind of have to let people like kind of bring their expertise to it, So, um, like for example, there's scenes where like Peter Giles, who I literally wrote thinking about his voice, says the lines, and it's not how I imagined it, but it's better. It's different, And so I'm like, oh, I thought he'd say it like this, but then he says it like this, and it's better. It's like, and then there's like Luke Jones, for example. He came in like 4 or 5 days before we started shooting because we had another actor. We ended up having to bring him in, and he had a vulnerability to the character that I didn't see, and it's funny because I didn't truly appreciate it until I was cutting them to or cutting the
Mm,
movie and was looking at the close-ups and what he was doing. And that's why there's a lot of shots of his eyes, like just kind of like because he brought this like wounded, almost dramatic element to the character that like I didn't that was there, but it wasn't like in the script. Like I didn't write him to be, and so he brought, he's such a good actor. He brought this depth to the character that it's like you watch him and when he talks about his parents, when he talks about what he's lost, and you're like, oh, this is just like a
mhm.
wounded animal, like a wounded child, like who's never healed, and it's just and so you know he brought what I thought would be just kind of a comedic performance and brought another layer to it, and so that's something that I really that's sort of a something that wasn't necessarily on the page that I couldn't have anticipated.
Hmm. That's gotta be so satisfying for you as a writer. This is also your directorial debut. Did anything surprise you about the overall experience? What was the biggest takeaway?
Is it takes a long time. It takes a lot longer. I was like, when we were shooting, I was like, all right, yeah, next year when people see this movie, and it's like, we wrapped this in summer in of August 16th of 2021.
Mm.
We wrapped, and it just came out, so it's like took a year, like it takes a long time, and I didn't realize, directing, so much of directing comes like after you shoot it. Like when I thought of directing before, I thought of a guy on set telling everybody what to do, and so much of it has to do with like music choice, with timing, to comedy. So it's all about, like just the rhythm, the amount of control that you have as a director, and that you need to have as a director, that is required. It is it's so much more all encompassing than I thought it was,
Mm.
and it's just whatever you think it's gonna be like if you're like someone who's like, oh, who's about to embark on their first movie, or wants to embark on their first movie, like like whatever you think it's gonna be, like commitment wise, even money wise, how much do you think it's gonna cost, how much money you gotta, it's like, or however hard it's gonna be, like it double, triple it, you know what I mean? Like it's hard, but it's so worth it. Like it's incredible. Like I wasn't gonna direct the movie. I didn't want it. It wasn't my plan to ever direct the movie. We had another director,
Mm.
and we had everything lined up, fully cast, everything, and the director, he had a show that got picked up, and so he had this amazing opportunity that you obviously have to take, and so it was kind of like the choice came down from like, because we weren't really going to be able to find another director. So it was kind of like either I direct it, or we kind of scrap it until we can get everything lined up together,
Mm.
at some other time, which to be honest could very much mean never. So it was kind of like, all right. And had no idea what I was agreeing to. I just thought, all right, I'll take the credit. But it ended up being, I can't even imagine somebody else directing it, because it's like,
Yeah.
just like all the decisions that like you have to make. Like I can't imagine someone else making like different decisions. It's a different movie. Like it would be a different movie.
And I imagine for your cast, it's also really beneficial to have both the writer director in that same role for that clarity. This film has made its way around the festival circuit. It's been incredibly well received. What do you think is resonating most with audiences? And was there a scene in particular that you were really excited for them to see?
Yeah, I think that the centerpiece of the film is kind of this like kind of long, almost like couples therapy scene in the middle of the movie.
Hmm.
They the two characters are on the couch, and they kind of come to a realization, and it's kind of where the movie kind of changes, kind of what it's about. Like um and it's this scene, and I remember, and this might sound not like a lot to some people, but for a 10-day shoot, an entire day to shoot that one scene from every,
Mm.
it was like that was the most, that was a tenth of our shoot, was that scene. And I think that's the scene that was the scene that I gave me the idea. Like that was like the bear monologue and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I think that's kind of the scene that probably, you know, people have been most receptive of, and you know, I think if people do like it, I hope that that's the case. I think it's just there's a simplicity to it. I tried to keep it really simple. It's almost like a fairy tale. Like it's like, there was a point where we were gonna there was a whole scene and explanation as to why it's happening that was cut out, and
Mm.
that we had written, and someone brought up like, and I was like, I just assumed that I had to explain it, and someone was like, you should get rid of that. And they mentioned like, and this was the other director who was gonna direct it, a guy named Jonathan Vogler. He had this, he was like, if you watch Groundhog Day, like they don't explain it, and you don't miss it, you don't need it. So he was just like, you should cut that out. Like we don't need to know why they're here. We don't need to know where they went, why they're gone. And so, again, like I said, I think there's the simplicity of it is, I think, something that people might enjoy.
Yeah. And the writing is fantastic as well. I got one final question for you. You wrote another screenplay that your father is going to go direct. Is there anything that you can tease about Knock, and outside of projects that you're creating on your own? What's next for you?
So yeah, Knocked is kind of, that's the direction we're going with that. It's I can tell you, the log line. It's about a young girl who's kind of selling her first house. She's a real estate agent, works for her mom, and kind of a group of inept bank robbers come, and they kind of like take her hostage, and it's a comedy. It's kind of like a, not farcical, but it's just, it's other than Westerns, my favorite genre is inept criminals, you know. So I like, yeah. So it's a bunch of like kind of criminals kind of tripping over each other, and and at the center of it, there's this young girl who's trying to kind of like, see how she can get out of the situation, and that's very exciting. I also have a boxing movie that is not a comedy. I mean, it's funny, but it's there's humor in it, just because of the concept. But it's about kind of like a regular person, like ideas like, what if a guy who's just like a normal, never been in a fight, wants to become a boxer, and that's something
Mhm.
I've been working on a long time, and I really want to get off the ground. It's not nothing like Amarillo or not. I think like if people see Amarillo and see that, they're gonna go, "What? This isn't funny." Like, but I think it's a story that I really want to tell. So hopefully that's soon and not, and fingers crossed.